The USS Zumwalt, America's most expensive naval failure, has become China's newest nightmare. This $8 billion floating embarrassment has transformed into a hypersonic missile platform that completely shifts the balance of power in the Pacific. In December 2024, after 14 months of intensive modifications, the USS Zumwalt emerged from Ingalls Shipbuilding in Mississippi as something entirely new. The failed 155mm gun systems that fired $800,000 rounds the Navy couldn't afford were gone. In their place stood sleek missile tubes, capable of launching the most advanced hypersonic weapons in the American arsenal, including the common hypersonic glide body technology, developed by Lockheed Martin and Dynetics. This transformation represents more than just a retrofit. It's the birth of a weapon system that Chinese military planners have been dreading. To understand why China is genuinely concerned about this development, we need to examine what makes the Zumwalt-class destroyers so unique. Despite being 40% larger than traditional Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the Zumwalt's radar cross-section resembles that of a fishing boat. This isn't marketing hyperbole. It's the result of revolutionary stealth technology that makes these ships 50 times harder to detect on radar than conventional destroyers. The Zumwalt's distinctive angular design, with its tumble-home hull sloping inward toward the waterline, represents the first time this hull form has been used extensively since the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. Every surface has been carefully angled to deflect radar waves away from their source. The composite deckhouse encloses sensors and electronics that would normally create radar returns. Even the acoustic signature has been designed to match that of Los Angeles-class submarines, making these surface warships nearly as quiet underwater as America's attack subs. But stealth alone doesn't explain Chinese concerns. The real game changer is what these ships can now carry: the conventional prompt strike missile system, featuring the common hypersonic glide body, represents a quantum leap in naval firepower. These hypersonic weapons travel at speeds exceeding Mach 5, 5 times the speed of sound, and can strike targets more than 3,000 kilometers away. To put this in perspective, a CPS missile launched from the Zumwalt could reach targets in mainland China from positions well beyond the range of most Chinese anti-ship weapons. Each Zumwalt-class destroyer will carry 12 of these hypersonic missiles, in addition to its existing 80 Mark 57 vertical launch system cells, compared to the 96 Mark 41 cells on Arleigh-Burke destroyers. This gives each ship an unprecedented long-range strike capability that can threaten high-value targets across vast distances. Vice Admiral Johnny Wolfe, the Navy's Director of Strategic Programs, was blunt when describing their strategic value. It's strategic, but it's not nuclear. If you look at the numbers, particularly with what we're going to with the ranges, it is very much a strategic asset. You can hold very high-value targets at risk. The timing of this modernization is no coincidence. China has been challenging American naval dominance in the Western Pacific, with the largest navy in the world by hull count, over 370 ships and submarines. Chinese military expansion has focused particularly on developing anti-access, area denial capabilities, designed to keep American forces away from Chinese territorial claims and potential flashpoints like Taiwan. China's Type 055 destroyers represent the pinnacle of this strategy. These massive warships carry 128 vertical launch cells, more than America's own heavily armed Ticonderoga-class cruisers, and can deploy hypersonic weapons like the Mach 10 YJ-21 anti-ship missile, complementing land-based DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles. The Type 055S were specifically designed to create defensive bubbles around Chinese naval formations, making it dangerous for American ships to operate within their engagement range. The modernized Zumwalts completely upend this calculus. Their stealth characteristics allow them to operate much closer to Chinese forces than conventional warships, potentially penetrating those defensive bubbles undetected. Once in position, they can launch hypersonic strikes that arrive faster than most defensive systems can react. This combination of stealth and hypersonic firepower creates what defense analysts call a surprise deep strike asset, exactly the kind of capability that Chinese military planners have been trying to defend against. The psychological impact can't be understated. Former U.S. Navy Captain Carl Schuster noted that The presence of a stealth warship will draw a great deal of Chinese interest. This interest manifested in official Chinese government statements when the USS Michael Mansour, the second Zumwalt-class destroyer, deployed to the Western Pacific. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs warned they were watching closely and criticized the deployment, saying, "All countries concerned should work toward military cooperation for the sake of peace and stability, and tensions should not be created." The technical specifications tell the story of why China should be concerned. The Zumwalt's electric propulsion system generates 78 megawatts of electricity, enough reserve power not just for current hypersonic systems, but for future directed energy weapons that could provide point defense against incoming missiles. This power generation capability is roughly equivalent to supplying electricity to a small city, giving these ships the ability to operate energy-hungry weapon systems that would overwhelm conventional naval power plants. The modernization program itself demonstrates American commitment to this capability. After spending $154.8 million on the Zumwalt's conversion alone, with total modifications across all three ships approaching $2 billion, the Navy is clearly serious about fielding this technology. The timeline is equally revealing. The Navy expects the Zumwalt to employ these weapons operationally by 2026, with sea testing planned for 2027 or 2028. But the most concerning aspect from China's perspective is how this technology will scale. The Zumwalt-class ships are explicitly being used as testbeds to prove hypersonic technology before it's deployed across the broader fleet, potentially including the future DDGX Next Generation Destroyer program. As Admiral Mike Gilday, the former Chief of Naval Operations, explained, "What I want as a testbed for that, the first surface ships that are going to have hypersonics are going to be the Zumwalts. That's a focus for us to field that system on the Zumwalt destroyers so that we can prove it and field it fast, and then scale it." This scaling potential is what keeps Chinese strategists awake at night. If hypersonic technology proves successful on the Zumwalts, it will inevitably spread to other platforms. The Navy is already planning to deploy similar weapons on Block 5 Virginia-class submarines by 2028. Eventually, this technology could appear on conventional destroyers, creating a distributed hypersonic strike capability across the entire Pacific Fleet. The strategic implications extend beyond simple firepower. Hypersonic weapons force adversaries to invest heavily in costly dispersal, hardening, and defense measures. China would need to spread its high-value assets across much wider areas, build expensive hardened facilities, and develop new defensive systems specifically designed to counter hypersonic threats. This defensive investment comes at the expense of offensive capabilities, potentially slowing China's military modernization in other areas. The deterrence value is equally significant. Military analysts point out that these weapons' value isn't measured in how often they're fired, but in the deterrence they create. The mere presence of hypersonic-armed Zumwalts in the Pacific changes the strategic calculus for any potential conflict. Chinese commanders must now account for the possibility that their most valuable assets, aircraft carriers, command centers, missile sites, could be struck within minutes from platforms they might not even detect. The modernized Zumwalt also represents a technological demonstration of American capabilities. After years of criticism about the original program being a $22.5 billion failure, these ships are finally finding their mission. The successful transformation from troubled gun platform to cutting-edge missile launcher sends a clear message about American adaptability and technological resilience. The irony isn't lost on military observers that the Zumwalt's original problems, the canceled gun system and lack of clear mission, actually created the space and weight capacity needed for hypersonic weapons. What seemed like a design flaw became a strategic advantage. The ship's massive size and abundant electrical power, once criticized as unnecessary, proved perfectly suited for next-generation weapon systems. China's response has been telling. Beyond official diplomatic protests, Chinese military publications have increased their focus on anti-stealth technologies and hypersonic defense systems. The deployment of Chinese aircraft carriers on the eastern side of the First Island chain, the strategic defensive line comprising Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, came shortly after the Zumwalt's modernization was announced. suggesting Chinese forces are already adjusting their posture in response to this new threat. The timeline for full deployment adds urgency to Chinese concerns. By fiscal year 2028, all 3 Zumwalt-class destroyers are expected to carry operational hypersonic weapons. This isn't theoretical future technology. It's a concrete capability arriving within the current strategic planning horizon. Chinese military leaders must account for this threat in their near-term planning, not distant future scenarios. The broader context makes this development even more significant. The United States is currently developing multiple hypersonic weapons programs: the Navy's Conventional Prompt Strike, the Army's Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon, and the Air Force's Hypersonic Attack Cruise Missile. China reportedly has 5 hypersonic missile series in testing or operational use, but the addition of stealth platforms capable of launching these weapons represents a qualitative change in the competition. As the USS Zumwalt prepares for operational deployment with its new hypersonic capability, and as its sister ship, USS Michael Mansour, takes up station in the Western Pacific, China faces a new reality. The naval balance they've worked decades to establish is shifting. The anti-access, area denial zones they've created to keep American forces at bay may no longer provide the protection they once offered. The modernized Zumwalt represents more than just a successful salvage of a troubled program. It's a demonstration that in the rapidly evolving world of naval warfare, adaptability matters more than initial design perfection. For China, watching these angular, nearly invisible ships prowl the Pacific waters with their hypersonic payloads, the message is clear. The game has changed, and the rules they thought they understood no longer apply.